From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The Supreme Court of Justice in Venezuela has asked the National Constituent Assembly to remove the immunity of opposition leader Juan Guaido. The president of the Supreme Court said this decision comes after Guaido violated his traveling ban in February. The court also ratified the decision to freeze his bank accounts and ban him from selling his properties. The decision will now be submitted to the president of the National Constituent Assembly, Vzla. And Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro addressed the nation Sunday night to announce a distribution plan for the next 30 days. This is to ensure the supply of electricity and a special contingency plans to guarantee water distribution.
I've approved a 30-day plan to go towards a system of rational distribution of electricity, one of equilibrium among the whole process of transmission, consumption, and distribution for the whole country, with a fundamental effort to guarantee the water supply to our people. I call upon private operators that own trucks to support with water tanks this special plan of attention. Governors and mayors must work to incorporate all the institutions like Barrio Nuevo, Barrio Tricolor, which brought trucks from China to serve our people while the process of restoring the electrical service is executed in a definite and stable way.
Our correspondent Luis Tavera has been traveling around Caracas to see how the transportation contingency plans are being carried out.
We are traveling across Caracas to showcase the reactivation of a public transport contingency plan. This is so citizens can have access to free and safe transportation. Another contingency set by the government is the free distribution of drinking water in communities all over the nation. Meanwhile, the president also announced a 30-day power-saving plan in order to restore a stable electricity supply to Venezuelans. While citizens remain calm, there is still a lot of movement as work resumed today, but with shortened days starting at 8 a.m. and ending at 2 p.m.
Venezuela faced two more power attacks over the weekend. The first occurred on Saturday at 7 p.m. and then again on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. The power outages have mostly affected the water system, as well as people's ability to purchase and store food. As authorities move to implement contingency plans to safeguard transport for citizens, people have started to prepare themselves for more attacks.
I think the contingency plans have been working well.
We need to charge our phones while there is power, to collect water. We have to prepare most food right away or try and keep it frozen.
Members of the opposition held some protests over the weekend. However, citizens are rejecting these actions, as they say this is no way to solve Venezuela's problems. Instead, they are calling for peace.
We have to continue forward in peace, just like we have until now. Looting or calling for violence, that solves nothing.
We are not going to solve any issues by inciting violence on the streets. We are all being affected by these attacks, and we are trying to explain this to people. We are receiving water. A water tank is on its way. We'll remain alert, but we will not succumb to desperation.
Communities have organized to distribute and safeguard water, gas, and cleaning supplies in order to contain the issues caused by this emergency.
We pass on messages by word of mouth because phones haven't been working for at least a week. We go to each other's houses to help, and when there is a bigger issue, we all get together to solve it as a community.
Community councils work in tandem with everyday citizens, hand in hand, in order to fulfill any needs the people may have.
Since March 7th, Venezuelans have been facing the consequences of this unconventional war as the country's power plants are being sabotaged.
Cuba's president has taken to social media to demand an end to the attacks against the Bolivarian nation. On Twitter, President Miguel Díaz-Canel wrote, "Peace and tranquility for the Bolivarian people. Threats, sanctions, intervention, and sabotage against Venezuela need to stop. Hands off Venezuela." Moving on, the National Minga for Life in Colombia has suspended talks with the government in the department of Valle del Cauca because of a lack of guarantees. Demonstrators maintain a permanent assembly in order to find a solution to the negativity of President Duque's government. Protesters continue to blockade some routes in the area. The leaders of the social Minga claim that the funding assigned to indigenous communities is insufficient to meet their health and education needs. The Colombian National Indigenous Organization announced the decision to call a halt to talks on social media. They said that discussions cannot continue without a guarantee against stigmatization, accusations, and persecution of the social Minga. Our correspondent Tatiana Portela gives us more details.
Colombian indigenous people are continuing protest action in the Cauca department. Protesters consist of campesinos and Afro-descendants who are demanding that the government respect their rights and fulfill the 1991 agreement. There are about 1,400 accords between the government and the communities agreed to since that time. 2 days ago, a negotiation table started between the Interior Minister and indigenous people. But on Sunday, the natives decided to cease talks since they felt that the government didn't guarantee their right to mobilize. The indigenous people also denounced the manner in which protesters were treated since the army was sent in to repress demonstrators. The protesters say they will not stop until the government commits to fulfilling their agreements.
We thank Tatiana for that report, and earlier we were joined by a lawyer for the ONIC, Fabian Alvarez, who told us about why indigenous leaders decided to suspend negotiations with the government.
Well, there are specifically 3 reasons that we can say now. First of all is that the state is stigmatized the Minga, and it is saying that it has been infiltrated by the guerrilla, which is of course a lie. But as a result of this, they have been militarizing the areas where the Minga is taking place. So this is one of the reasons why it has been putting in an off stage. The second one is that stigmatization also has occurred not only because of the Minga, but because it is an indigenous protest. This doesn't occur when farmers or the students go to protest. It's specifically with indigenous people. And the third reason is you were saying that judicialization is one of the causes, and it is. While we are asking for them to talk to us, they're starting to taking us in, saying that we are criminals, and we have to be punished as a consequence of that. Basically, those are the reasons. We don't have guarantees.
Uruguayan president has dismissed his defense minister and the head of the army over their action in a human rights case. Tabaré Vázquez took the decision after it became public that they knew about the guilt of a man sentenced for the disappearance of a guerrilla during the dictatorship, but didn't tell the court. The officer convicted, José Gavazo, confessed that he threw the body of Roberto Gomensoro into a river. Gomensoro, who was part of the Tupamaro movement, was arrested in March 1973, and his body was found days later in the river. Our correspondent Mateo Grille has the details.
After the daily minister cabinet meeting was finished, the Uruguayan president Tabaré Vázquez announced he was dismissing all the top military command from their positions, including the defense minister Jorge Menéndez, the vice minister Daniel Montiel, the commander-in-chief of the army José González, and chief of staff Alfredo Ramón. This followed an investigation by the Uruguayan newspaper El Observador, which published the results of the so-called Honor Court, which evaluated the behavior of former military personnel but did not send the results to the judicial court. The behavior evaluated included the confession of the officer José Gavazo, in which he recognized that he had thrown the body of the guerrilla Roberto Gomensoro into a river after he was killed. The Honor Court hid that information, so the president decided to sack the top officials of the defense minister and the armed forces themselves. It is not yet known who will replace them.
We thank Mateo for that report. Tied up and hanging from a pole. Activists in Sao Paulo are reenacting a popular torture method during Brazil's military dictatorship in protest of President Jair Bolsonaro's order to commemorate the period. Activists are showcasing the different torture methods that were used during the 1964-1985 dictatorship. This comes just a after thousands rallied across the country against the presidential order to celebrate the anniversary of the coup that started over 2 decades of military rule.
There will always be groups that support this period, but we believe that most people who know what happened, who know historical facts, think this talk is divisive, especially at a moment in which the president has to be uniting the country over more important issues, which we need to take on.
A well-known trans activist has been murdered in Peru. Claudia Vera was shot down in the streets of the capital Lima while she was hanging out with a group of friends. According to witnesses, Vera was arguing with a man when a woman threatened her and left. Minutes later, the same woman allegedly shot her 5 times. Several organizations have expressed concern over the killing and are demanding that the murderer be brought to justice. The president of the Ecuadorian parliament is to be investigated for allegedly blocking a corruption probe into the president. This after an audio recording was leaked last month. The administration committee of the National Assembly set up a commission to start investigating Elizabeth Cabezas. In the recording, she is heard talking to the interior minister about the debate in parliament to investigate President Lenin Moreno over alleged corruption. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 15 Haitian migrants are dead after their boat capsized in the waters off Turks and Caicos. 14 survivors were rescued during a search operation which began on Sunday after the U.S. Coast Guard was alerted about the tragic incident. The search continues as at least 4 bodies are still unaccounted for. Guyana is working to implement measures to end child labor and is urging the public to report cases of children being employed. The Labor Department will be launching a national child labor policy in April and will enforce drastic measures for those persons who employ children. The chief labor officer says there have been 3 reported cases for 2019, which are being followed up. The Labor Department has also reached out to several communities to ensure that those caught employing children will be prosecuted. In Trinidad and Tobago, the tenacity and resolve of spiritual shouter Baptists in their struggle for freedom was celebrated on Spiritual Shouter Baptist Liberation Day. The public holiday was observed on March 30th in the Twin Island Republic, the only country in the world to do so. Members of the religion fought hard for the right to practice their religion without fear of imprisonment. The day commemorates the repeal of the 1917 ordinance, which prohibited the very vocal worship practices of the religious group. Indigenous Maya communities in Guatemala are condemning the construction of a wastewater treatment plant in the Atitlan Lake. They believe that this project is an excuse to privatize and sell water for industrial purposes.
The Sutujil people, who are the ancestral heirs of the Atitlan Lake, located in the Solola department, reject the construction of a wastewater treatment plant, which would cost millions of dollars.
We, as a community, have raised our voices to say that water is sacred and it is not merchandise.
This joint public-private venture includes the installation of pipes at about 40 meters deep in the lake to collect water, purify it, and then sell it to be used for irrigating monoculture crops.
In theory, the plan is okay because it proposes cleaning up wastewater. However, in reality, the plan is an excuse to generate profits because what they are proposing is to sell the lake's water.
The budget for this venture is set at more than $215 million, and the communities would be forced to fund a percentage of this. They say this wouldn't solve the issue of pollution they face.
We know that our lake is being polluted, but where does all that pollution come from? It comes from all the businessmen who use fertilizers and plastics, things that we have never used.
According to the Sutujile people, a realistic proposal to clean the lake will be going back to their ancestral traditions.
We have asked people to go back to traditional agriculture. With techniques like permaculture, agroecology, biodynamic, we should start cleaning the lake using those strategies.
They have told us that the lake is dying, but that's a lie because the lake is alive and can clean itself.
Guatemala is currently on its electoral campaign period for general elections that will take place on the 16th of June. But most of the mayoral candidates have chosen to ignore discussions about pollution in the Atitlan Lake.
Santiago Botón, Telesur, San Pedro, La Laguna, Sololá, Guatemala.
Survivors of Cyclone Idai are trying to restore their lives through daily routines in Meira, Mozambique. Families are seen searching for a sense of normality in camps by doing different chores. The aftermath of the cyclone has seen the outbreak of cholera and entire villages left submerged, leaving about 1.85 million people displaced. The natural disaster killed over 700 people across Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. And an area of over 22 hectares has been disinfected so far of a cholera outbreak in Beira by Chinese aid workers. Issues of food and drinking water have been solved in the shelter. However, epidemic prevention has remained a big challenge due to overcrowding in camps. The Algerian president is set to step down by April 28th before his mandate expires, according to state media. Abdelaziz Bouteflika said before resigning that he will ensure continuity of the state's institutions. On Sunday, he announced that a new cabinet of 27 ministers would run the country until a new president is elected, including well-known political figures and newcomers. But citizens in Nigeria have said the new government is far from satisfying their demands, as they believe the new government is not different from the previous one. Weeks of protests have been ongoing in the country, calling on the president to step down.
We want them to go. Leave us. We do not need you, either to judge or to put in place a new government. Why is it their choice? They live and leave their children. What does it mean? That the system is always the same.
We'll check a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Insecurity remains in the north of the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially in the municipality of Kivu and in the capital of the province, Goma.
He ran into bandits armed with machetes and spikes. They attacked him and killed him.
He was the acting president.
He was coming from a funeral. Why did he get killed? I mean, they are trying to kill the whole family.
There are Hutu Congolese families expelled from Lubero, landless farmers who have to rent rooms or live with host families.
We are the victims of the people they killed in Lubero. Before he got killed, he said at the funeral that he would keep defending his cause.
They camped outside the headquarters of the provincial government to demand their rights. They want to know if this is going to stop or if it will continue.
There were over 20 people killed in Goma last month. It was worse during the war, but insecurity is still blocking the future. People are crying out for peace. Civil society and social movements are urging the government to guarantee the dignity of the police and soldiers.
There are places where 3 police officers have just 1 weapon. Many of them are just working as guards.
After 7 in the evening, you can't even walk the streets. You're scared, even of the police and the army. We ask the government to give the police what they need to do their job.
As a sign of the changes going on, the demonstration gets through the barrier and delivers its message to the governor. They want training and decent pay for the security forces.
People continue dying.
You don't look at the mouth of someone who's crying.
The governor promises to pass on their message. He says that everyone should participate in building peace and justice. A new dynamic is needed at all levels: local, national, regional, and international. The people want to play their part and take responsibility in the face of the great challenges of building peace.
Residents of the Gieta and Rusiki villages in Rwanda are still working to heal their wounds 25 years after the genocide. And the water stream that separates them has become a key tool in the process. The neighboring villages are going to peacefully share the stream they used before the genocide. But the horror of the mass killing, which saw 100,000 people, mostly Tutsis, killed in 100 days, continues to haunt them. Children were the first to gather together at the water, followed by adults, even though the painful memories persist.
For someone to admit to the crimes he committed only to the authorities without returning to ask for forgiveness from his victims, do you think that is enough? It's far from enough.
Asking for forgiveness was not easy at all. The first time we crossed to ask for forgiveness, there were around 100 of us. Amongst us, people were scared.
British MPs have voted against the 4 possible alternative plans for Brexit. This comes after they also rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's deal with the EU for 3 times. None of the 4 proposals, including a customs union and a Norway-style arrangement, gained a majority. The EU has called for an emergency summit for April 10th.
This House has continuously rejected leaving without a deal, just as it has rejected not leaving at all. Therefore, the only option is to find a way through which allows the UK to leave with a deal. The government continues to believe that the best course of action is to do so as soon as possible. If the House were to agree a deal this week, it may still be possible to avoid holding European parliamentary elections.
About 30 firefighters have been killed by wildfires in southwest China. Nearly 700 men were deployed to put out the blaze, which broke out in the forest of the Sichuan province on Saturday. However, on Sunday, 30 fire officers went missing. Reports say a change in the wind direction caused the fireball, which trapped the men. Their bodies were retrieved on Monday. At least 30 people have been killed and hundreds more injured as a violent thunderstorm swept through southern Nepal. A strong rainstorm has swept through southern Nepal, destroying homes. Many of those killed were asleep on Sunday night when powerful winds sent deadly debris flying through the air. Officials said Bara district near the Indian border sustained the most damage and casualties. Northern Thailand faced the most serious smog crisis in the country's history on Saturday. Residents were advised to stay inside air-conditioned buildings, avoid outdoor activities, and wear face masks if they had to go outside. The level of pollution in most parts of Chiang Mai continuously remains over the world's safe limit of 50 microns, posing a serious health risk. Thailand's Prime Minister plans to visit the city on Tuesday. South Korea has made arrangements to repatriate remains of Chinese soldiers killed in the Korean War. South Korean military wrapped up remains of Chinese soldiers for repatriation to China. The South Korean military said they dug up the remains from March to November in 2018 and found the remains of 10 Chinese soldiers. The coffins carrying the remains are scheduled to be returned to China on Wednesday. The Korean War started on June 25th, 1950 and ended in July 1953. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.